All right. Hello again, Avengers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. It's daily vlog 2025, number 297. And today, first things first, don't forget to pick up your copy of The Hearth Witch's Guide to Magic and Murder, Book 1 of the Hemlock Saga, written by USA Today best-selling author Kiri. All right, that's out of the way. I need a drink. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to mourn the passing of Sigil. Yep, it's official. Sigil's dead. If anyone's been watching this channel for a decent amount of time, you know that I was kind of cheering for Sigil. A lot of people go, "Oh, it's dead, it's over," and that was way, way back in like March when they laid off a significant portion of the staff. And I was in the boat of that's technically not the end of it. It could be that they were just cleaning house. It could be a billion different things. Well, as of today, they have officially canceled Sigil. For anyone who doesn't know, Project Sigil was a 3D virtual tabletop that was being built through integration with D&D Beyond. I myself tried it out. It was interesting. Had it worked the way it was designed to work, it would have been probably one of the best ways to play Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. And that's really it. It wasn't really designed to be a full virtual tabletop that you could play any game that you wanted on. No, it was designed to help you play D&D 5th edition. And it was designed to automate a lot of it. Effectively, what I think they were trying to go for is they were trying to make playing 5th edition feel like playing Baldur's Gate 3. They wanted you to be able... I mean, the interface was remarkably similar to Baldur's Gate 3. They wanted you to be able to click on abilities and then, click on enemies, and then it would do your attack rolls and it would track damage and all that stuff. Which, in my humble opinion, is not a bad idea. Again, idea. A lot of people, including myself, really, really loved Baldur's Gate 3. And it wasn't just because Baldur's Gate 3 is an exceptionally well-made game with a great story, phenomenal voice acting, the visuals are gorgeous. It's also the best video game version of D&D we've probably ever had, aside from maybe the Temple of Elemental Evil. The Temple of Elemental Evil by Troika Games after it was fixed by a bunch of modders. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was really good. I mean, Celasta, Crown of the Magister, was also a really, really good D&D implementation. But as far as playing a game where it actually felt like you were playing Dungeons & Dragons and not a video game that was Dungeons & Dragons themed, Baldur's Gate 3 was still is absolutely brilliant. If you haven't played Baldur's Gate 3, it is phenomenal. It really, really is. So the idea that they wanted to create a way for D&D players that might have gotten introduced to D&D through Baldur's Gate 3 and are now, really excited to play it, but playing Baldur's Gate 3 is very, very different than playing D&D at a table. And even if you do virtual tabletops and stuff like that, things like Foundry, I've talked about Foundry before. It's not my cup of tea, but it is for a lot of people. And one of the selling points of Foundry is the automation aspect of it. Foundry is built around automation so that whatever your game you're playing requires significantly less thought process. You click on buttons, it does the calculations for you. Roll20 can do that to a point, but Foundry was designed to do that. Roll20 does it because it's a feature people wanted. Project Sigil had the opportunity to be something truly amazing. And the other thing that was unique about Project Sigil, it was a 3D virtual tabletop. So instead of having 2D maps and 2D minis that you just move around on a 2D plane, Project Sigil was 3D. You know, things had height, and you could create multi-level dungeons and things like that, and you could create entire worlds and dioramas. And the stuff that was created in Project Sigil was actually pretty interesting. They had some pre-made maps in there that were built in Project Sigil that looked like they had come directly out of Baldur's Gate 3. Like, they looked really, really nice. However, the idea was really cool. The implementation was dog shit. Now, I should mention, there were some really cool things. Things like you could create a token, and it had, this is one of the things that I actually really, really enjoyed. It had a token builder in it, technically still does. They're going to be continuing to run Project Sigil until next October. So we still have a year of it existing. But they had a token builder where basically you could choose, very similar to kind of like Hero Forge, where you kind of choose the race and then you can add all these items to it, and it turned into something really cool. And you can make your own custom minis. And had Sigil become a real thing, that probably would have been my favorite part of it, is creating those custom 3D minis, because they were really fun to make. After you created that mini, you could link it with a character sheet on D&D Beyond. You would just, directly through the program, you would just click on it, and you were signed in through your D&D Beyond account. You had to have a D&D Beyond account for it. And then it would show you all the characters, and you just click on the one you wanted, and it would import everything about that character to your token. So your hit points, your AC, your magic items, all that stuff was instantly imported to this token, and then you could move around. And then when initiative was rolled, you could roll initiative, you could make your attacks, everything right there in Project Sigil. That, in and of itself, is really amazing, especially since, as far as character builders go, D&D Beyond has one of, if not the best, online character builders for any tabletop RPG that currently exists. It is robust. It allows you to do a lot of different things. There's an entire homebrew section, so you can create your own stuff for it. It is really, really solid. And then you can use your character sheet on D&D Beyond to play D&D live. There's an app that you can use to actually play. Like, you can go to a convention and use D&D Beyond as your character sheet on your phone, on a tablet. You can use it online. There's actually a plugin for Roll20 called Beyond. I think it's called Beyond 20 or something like that. That what it does is it actually syncs your D&D Beyond character sheet with Roll20 and allows any rolls that you make on D&D Beyond to show up in your Roll20 chat and stuff like that, which was really, really cool. So the idea that you could create this character on D&D Beyond and then instantly transfer it into a Baldur's Gate 3-like experience was a really, really great idea. But it just didn't work. I tried building my own map. I got about 20 minutes into building my own map, and I got so frustrated with it that I just gave up. It wasn't fun in any way, shape, or form. It just wasn't fun trying to build a map in there. And then I tried running some combat on their pre-made maps, and it just didn't work very well. It was very glitchy. It was very, very slow. It was not fun in any way, shape, or form. Which is sad because and we'll get into this a little bit later in more detail, but the number of 3D virtual tabletops is remarkably small. And if you look at things like Critical Role, Acquisitions Incorporated, I think even Dimension 20 does it. Having a 3D model for your players to actually play on is so amazing. I tried my hand at some 3D terrain. It turned out very, very poorly because I'm not particularly creative. But, excuse me. It is, it really does add an extra dimension to your games. And there are companies that, like, they built their entire business model around creating 3D terrain for Dungeon Masters. Things like Dwarven Forge is probably the most well known. So the fact that if you're playing online right now, you are limited to 2D maps and that's it, sucks. And there is a definite market for a 3D virtual tabletop. And I think that's what Wizards of the Coast, specifically probably Hasbro, saw, was there's a market for this and we could make a shit ton of money out of it. But they didn't. To me, it feels like they went, oh, this will be easy. And they didn't realize that they needed to build the engine before they could even think about actually creating all the stuff that they were eventually going to sell. No, they immediately went into, well, these are all the different things we can sell, so let's start designing that stuff. And then the engine will be easy. And it wasn't. The engine that, I don't know if it was like based on a pre-built engine like Unity or you know, anything like that. But or if it was a proprietary engine, but whatever it was, it did not work. And that's the thing that was most upsetting, because it had a lot of promise. And again, as of right now, the 3D virtual tabletop market is not just surprisingly small, it is almost non-existent. I was only able to find a few 3D tabletops, and a couple of them stopped updating years ago. So as much as they still exist, they're in early access forever. So, yeah. The fact that it took them this long for them to finally go, yeah, we're done, in my mind says they were looking for a way to try and salvage this in some way, shape, or form. And it's finally gotten to the point that they're like, you know what, it's just not possible. We're this isn't going to be a thing, so we're done with this. Which again is a little bit sad to me. I wanted it to be a cool thing. It required an investment and an expertise that they didn't have. There's also the issue that at the same time they were developing Project Sigil, D&D Beyond had already gotten pretty far into the development of Maps, which is their 2D virtual tabletop, which, again, I've played around with. Just like Project Sigil, Maps is a phenomenally good 2D virtual tabletop if you exclusively want to play D&D 5th edition. It doesn't work for anything that's not D&D, and it is a little bit feature limited compared to most virtual tabletops out there, simply because it hasn't existed as long. But it is fully integrated with D&D Beyond. You buy an adventure on D&D Beyond, you can instantly play it on Maps. You can drag and drop monsters that you own from D&D Beyond directly onto the map, and not only will it put the monster's token on there, it will also automatically have its hit points, its AC, everything. It is a very nice virtual tabletop that I would love to see them add even more features to. The other thing that's nice about Maps is, my understanding is, in order to use it as a dungeon master, I think all you need is a subscription to D&D Beyond. And I believe for players, it's 100% free, which is not true about a few of the 3D virtual tabletops I'm going to talk about in a little bit here. So that's nice. The integration with D&D Beyond is very, very nice. But when they were basically... and again, it seemed really, really obvious to me that the people making maps were a completely different group than the people making Sigil. And the people making Sigil... It feels like Maps was created by D&D Beyond, which is owned by Wizards of the Coast, but it still has some of its own people. Sigil was made by Wizards of the Coast, and I think more specifically by Hasbro, and it just wasn't made very well. So yeah. Now, what do we do next? Well, what if, I was really invested in this? What if I do want to play things in 3D? Well, like I said, the market for 3D virtual tabletops is very, very large. Of customers is very, very large. A lot of people want a 3D virtual tabletop. The number of products in that market right now is exceptionally small. I really only have 4 examples for you guys of stuff that is actively in development, that is getting positive reviews, and works for the most part. The first one I want to talk about isn't technically designed for tabletop RPGs, but you can use it for that because you can use it for just about anything, and that is Tabletop Simulator. If you've never heard of Tabletop Simulator is a physics engine. It's really all it is. It's a physics engine that has a built-in table that you can play board games on, and they have official DLC for Tabletop Simulator for things like Zombicide or Super Fights, Darkest Night, Boss Monster, One Night Ultimate Werewolf. They have official modules where you can buy basically digital versions of board games, and then you can play them on Tabletop Simulator. And Tabletop Simulator is so robust that you can do so much in it. I've in addition to the official modules, they have a Steam workshop for Tabletop Simulator where you can find just about anything. A while ago, I downloaded a Castlevania board game that someone developed. I think Konami cease and desisted them into nothingness. But before that happened, they used to sell PDFs of all the stuff you needed to play the board game. Or they didn't sell it, they just gave it away. And so I do still have those. But there are so many different Steam Workshop things that you can get for almost any board game you could want to. And again, because Tabletop Simulator is a physics engine, like it has built-in dice that you can roll. It has built-in things like decks of cards and stuff like that. And so the way that you play, the way that you would play a TTRPG in it is you would download little figures and stuff like that, of which there are many on the workshop. And then you can download terrain and stuff like that, and then basically build it like you would if you were building 3D terrain for your players, which any DM that has ever worked with 3D terrain will tell you right now, it is super, super cool. It is also a huge pain in the ass to design all that stuff. Like, it takes a lot of time. The end result, totally worth it, but it does take a lot of time. So if you go to the Tabletop Simulator Steam Workshop, you can narrow things down by categories. One of the categories is role-playing games, and that particular that particular category only has 405 pages of content. Um, some of those are pre-built maps. Some of those are technically board games that are closer to TTRPGs and stuff like that. Like, it's interesting to say the least. But if you wanted to play, and I do know of people that play TTRPGs on Tabletop Simulator, it is doable, but it is not designed around that, and it's not a great experience. One nice benefit about Tabletop Simulator, it's the cheapest option of anything we're going to talk about today. It only costs $20 for a license. It goes on sale fairly regularly. And if I remember correctly, it also has VR support. So you can technically, I'm going to look here before I say the wrong thing. Yeah, it does have VR support. So you can play this in VR as well if you wanted more of that feeling of being in a at an actual table with friends. All right, had to finish off my apple juice. So that is Tabletop Simulator. Moving on. The next virtual to the tabletop, which is the one that I have the most experience with, because I actually own this one, is a VTT called Tailspire. Tailspire is a 3D virtual to the tabletop. I found out about it because Dimension 20, for one of their games a few years ago, actually partnered with Tailspire, and Tailspire actually created custom assets for them because they were playing like a space style TTRPG, and so Tailspire at that point was almost exclusively fantasy, and so they actually created assets for Dimension 20, and they used it for one of their campaigns, I believe. And it looked really, really cool, and so I picked it up, and it is. The problem with Tailspire is this. The problem I have with Tailspire is the problem that I have with all 3D virtual tabletops. It's the same problem that I have with building 3D terrain for in-person play. It's a pain in the ass. The interface is not the most intuitive interface I have ever used. It works, but you do have to take the time to learn it. The price is not bad. It's $25. It's only $5 more than Tabletop Simulator. And the other thing that's nice is to create maps in it, you need to buy it. For players to play it, there is a demo version that they can get, I believe. And if I get any of this wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. Either I will pin your comment, or if I get a lot of things wrong, I would just make a comment that I pin that mentions all the stuff that I got wrong that you guys told me about. But I believe with Tailspire, only the DM technically needs to purchase it. Everyone else can use the demo to be able to play in the world. One of the reviews that I read is it is a bit resource heavy. They specifically said it made their computer run physically hot, so it does take a lot of processing power, or it did when that review was written 3 years ago. It's possible that it's gotten better. I have not messed around in Tailspire in a little while because I've been dealing with other stuff. But yeah, like I said, Dimension 20 has used it and they really, really enjoyed it. I've used it and I think it's very, very cool. Yeah. So that's one. Moving on. The other thing with Tailspire is it has been around for a while. It was officially released into early access April 15th of 2021. So it's over 4 years old, which is a huge benefit for it. It means it's had 4 years to learn how to get things going. But it also still is in early access, so feel free to take that with a grain of salt. The next one is a VTT called RPG Stories. This is not one that I'm familiar with. I haven't played it in any way, shape, or form, but it was something when I was looking for virtual tabletops today for this video, it was something that came up, and it is reviewed relatively well. Yeah, just checking some stuff for it. So this one only came out November 17th of 2023, so it's just barely under 2 years old. Instead of the 4 years for Tailspire. The other thing that reviews are saying is, while it started as more of a kind of fantasy, more fantasy focused, which most VTTs are going to start with, because the majority of tabletop RPGs tend to have either be straight up fantasy or are fantasy adjacent. From what I've seen on here, it looks like they are leaning a little bit more heavily into the modern and sci-fi styles of assets and things like that. If you actually look at the pictures that they have on here, I think they have a grand total of 1 picture on the preview that actually has anything to do with fantasy. Everything else is entirely science fiction. So while it specifically says it fully supports all 3 major TTRPG areas, fantasy, modern, and sci-fi, from what I'm reading from reviews, they've kind of ditched or put on a back burner the fantasy stuff and have really leaned heavily into the more modern and sci-fi stuff, which is nice. Again, the vast majority of virtual tabletops are very focused on fantasy stuff. So RPG stories, going for, again, a market that's not being met as adequately is nice. It also means if you're not using modern or sci-fi stuff, then you're probably going to be a little bit more frustrated with it. The other kind of downside for RPG stories is it's a little more expensive than Tailspire. It's $30, and in order for players to play in it, they either have to buy their own copy of the game, so everybody at your table either needs to buy the $30 product, or there is a DLC called Unlock Player Seats. It just came out this year, so up until March 13th is when it came out. Up until March 13th of this year, you actually everyone had to purchase it themselves. With this, it allows people to just use the demo to be able to play in games, which again tends to be significantly more common for VTTs in general, where they'll generally have like the GM has to pay for something, then the players can just join. However, unlocking player seats is $64.99. So yes, that's still cheap. Like if you're running just a table of 4 people, it is still cheaper to buy 1 subscription for the GM and then the $64.99 unlock player seats. Oh, and it also requires the GM version DLC is what it says. Where is this? Requires the GM version upgrade DLC, but I don't see a GM stories. It says that you have to have an upgrade for GMs. All the owners of the original RPG Stories VTT GM version can already host games and invite players using the GM version. Unlock player seats allow you to invite up to 10 players to your online sessions, unlimited times with different players each time. Key difference is that these 10 players don't need to pay to play. They only need to download the free RPG. Okay. So apparently, even just to run, you have to have a special GM version of it. And then in addition to that, if you don't want your players to have to actually pay for it, you have to purchase a $65 DLC. I'm not a fan of that. To me, that just seems predatory at the very least. And I cannot find this GM version DLC. I cannot find what the cost of that is anywhere on the Steam page. It doesn't list it as an official DLC. So yeah, I haven't the foggiest idea what that is supposed to be and how expensive that's supposed to be. Unless the base version is the GM version, I have no idea. It's weird. So anyway, yeah, that's it's expensive, but people seem to like it. There's not many reviews of it. There's a grand total of 29 reviews. The majority of the reviews that I have seen tend to be from a couple years ago. At the most recent reviews, there's one from March 12th. And then the most recent one after that is July 14th of 2024. So people are not really reviewing this very often. And it may have everything to do with the fact that, again, Tailspire is just more well-known. Their reviews, they have over 3,000 reviews. Their recent reviews, they've got 35 in the last... it says 77% of the 35 reviews in the last 30 days are positive. So in the last 30 days, they've had 35 reviews. So Tailspire is just significantly well known, so that might be why RPG Stories is not as well known. Also, again, it's significantly more expensive to get into RPG Stories than it is to get into Tailspire. So again, I would love, if anybody in the audience actually has used RPG Stories, I would love to hear about it and hear if it works. Like I said, I like Tailspire. I'm just not particularly fond of the interface. For me, it just hasn't worked super well, and it hasn't clicked for me. So if RPG Stories has a better interface, I'd be willing to pay more for something that works better for me. Yeah. The final one is called 3D Canvas, and it is a module for Foundry. Now, I've talked about Foundry before. One of my biggest issues with Foundry is the fact that there's no way to play in Foundry if you don't pay for it. Everybody has to pay for it. Compared to, and it's a Foundry in and of itself is a 2D virtual tabletop. Also, it's a very, very complicated tabletop, and my personal opinion of it is the user base is not very intuitive. Because of the complexity, it's very, very confusing until you learn how to use it. Whereas something like Roll20, to me, feels significantly more intuitive, significantly easier to just kind of sit down and play in. I've messed around with Foundry before. It's much more complicated than I would like it to be. That being said, 3D Canvas is a module by someone named The Ripper 93 that basically creates a 3D virtual tabletop in Foundry, which is very, very cool. But unfortunately, due to the fact that I don't own Foundry, I cannot test this in any way, shape, or form. That being said, I have looked at some reviews and things like that for it, and people seem to like it for the most part. The other thing that's kind of cool about this is the way that all Foundry modules work is they show kind of the different updates. This particular module, just in the past, let's go a little over a month, has been updated 6 times in the last month. When you talk about active development, this 100% is an active development. So that in and of itself is a really, really big deal. And everything I've been able to find out about this is the Ripper 98 person seems to very much be open to feedback and responds to the audience as much as they can. So if you already own Foundry, that makes it significantly nicer for you. The other issue that I have with 3D Canvas, you cannot purchase it. It is not free or anything like that. The only way that you can use it is you have to subscribe to their Patreon. And the Patreon itself, I'm trying to see what the members are. So if you want access to the module collection, it's $12.50 a month. If you want access to early access stuff, it goes up to $15.50, and then the master tier, which gives you access to the secret wiki, which is an exclusive guide to macro writing. That's $25 a month. So if you wanted to play using 3D Canvas, you would have to bare minimum pay $12.50 a month in addition to purchasing Foundry. Now, as far as how players interact with this, I actually don't know. Again, I would be very, very happy to hear from anyone that has actually used this or played around with it or anything like that. What the experience is like. The videos that they have of it look very, very cool. And it looks like you could actually use a combination of 2D and 3D maps, where you put a 2D map on there and then you can build on top of it using 3D assets, which is very cool, very, very useful. But yeah, I really don't know how well it works or anything like that. So I do know I have at least one fan that uses Foundry and is very, very happy with Foundry. So if you wanted to look into this, maybe don't spend any money on it unless this is something that you really, really want. But it does mention some free aspects of this. So maybe there are free things that you could use, that you could poke around and kind of see, hey, is this cool or is this not? I would love to hear about that in the description. And if it's complex enough, I'd even be willing to sit down for like a Discord interview or a Zoom call and actually like talk about it with someone that has actually played it. And that's same thing is true about RPG stories too. If somebody wants to kind of explore RPG stories, as long as you get a lot of information about it to where I could have a substantial interview with you, I would be more than willing to do an interview and talk about how it works and what it feels like and stuff like that. Because again, I really like the idea of a 3D virtual tabletop. But designing one is I assume designing one is so incredibly complex that there simply isn't a market for it right now. Or there's not a large market for it. And the few people that are actually in that market right now don't seem to be even competing with each other. So, yeah, it sucks that Sigil is gone. If they had actually put the time and effort into it to make it something cool, it probably could have led the market. Easily. But as is the problem with a lot of businesses, they looked at something and went, well, that looks simple, we should do that, without realizing how much more complex it was going to be. And then they went to step 7 and completely forgot to do steps 2 through 6 of creating something that could support all the things that they were going to monetize through it. And that really sucks because, again, Sigil had a lot of promise. These virtual tabletops, aside from Tabletop Simulator, which I'm going to be blunt here, I don't really see Tabletop Simulator getting any quote unquote better because it does everything it's supposed to do. It is a brilliant physics engine, and that's all it's supposed to be. But Tailspire is getting better every single day. RPG Stories, as far as I can tell, is getting better every single day. And this 3D canvas is getting constantly updated. So again, I have no idea if it's technically getting quote unquote better, but I would be very, very surprised if this person was not just continually implementing more cool things in it. So interested to hear from you guys. Does anyone here actually use a 3D virtual tabletop? What is your 3D virtual tabletop of preference? Feel free to tell us why we should be using it. And if not, why not? Do you are you just not an online player in general? You prefer your in-person games? Do you just not like the 3D aspects of it? Do you like your 2D stuff? It feels better? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.